Hello, everyone. My name is Audrey Ayo, and I'm an Ivy House Future Leaders Project winner for the 2022 cohort. I am so elated to have with me today Professor Dr. Ger Graus, OBE. Dr. Ger Graus, OBE, is a renowned figure in the field of education, where since March 2017, he holds the position of First Global Director of Education at Kidzania. Kidzania, where children aged 4 to 14 can experience the world of work through role play, is designed to inspire and empower from inspiration to aspiration. Ger has also been at the heart of innovation and project development with the University of Cambridge, Cass Business School, Havas Helia, and Ernst & Young. Based on his findings, Dr. Ger is now spearheading a futures awareness campaign to introduce careers education into the primary phase. After all, as he frequently reminds us, children can only aspire to what they know exists. Thank you so much for agreeing to this interview, Ger. I'm so excited to speak with you today.
Audrey, thank you for having me, and thank you for the introduction. I'm probably marginally more excited than you are, so there we are. Let's roll.
I love one of your famous phrases, which is children can only aspire to what they know exists. And I feel as though how you delivered the story on creating social impact for children from underprivileged backgrounds and opening their horizons to other things that they might not have known existed is so inspiring. So can you tell me a bit more, or tell us a bit more about what you mean by that?
I used to talk a lot to children, particularly young children, about the kind of things, the kind of jobs that they could do at Manchester Airport. So I used to sit down with groups of 6, 7, 8-year-olds and then ask the question, tell me the jobs you could do at the airport. And of course, the answer you get are the things they can see. Now, that in itself is quite interesting because the percentage of jobs visible at the airport is probably only about 45%. Yeah, baggage handling, passport control, whatever it is, selling newspapers in W.H. Smith's. But 55% of the jobs are, call it backstage. So instantly, if you don't know that they don't exist, if nobody's ever told you, you can't aspire to those jobs because you don't know they're around. And then sitting down with those groups of youngsters and actually saying, look, there's a plane there. You can fly planes as well, you know. And the answer that came far too often was, people from Wythenshawe don't fly planes. So by the time those youngsters got to the age of 6, 7, 8, somebody put a ceiling on their aspirations. And it wasn't the children who put their own ceiling on. It will have been communities, other adults around them, the expectations that existed or don't exist in that environment at the time. So essentially, we need to twitch curtains, open windows, open doors, and widen horizons. And what's really, really important in those communities is that we must stop laying everything at the doorstep of the teachers. Yeah, every child is everyone's responsibility. If we collectively want the world to be better, if we collectively want our young people to have better futures, we can't then say to the teacher, oh, you do that bit. We have to constantly ask ourselves how we function as co-educator, whether we're businesses, whether we're grandparents, whether we're parents, neighbors, whether we head up a charity, whatever it is. If that is not at the heart of what we do, then we failed as human beings.
It holds so tight to the point of how a lot of children may be overcoming the ceiling of aspiration, and they feel as though they can't see themselves in certain roles because of the stereotypes that they've been brought up in their communities. And I want to ask, what would you say to young people who are watching this, who feel they have ceiling of aspiration? They can't imagine themselves being a pilot or a data analyst or a professor.
I think that's a very good question. So first of all, the first thing would be, and I appreciate, right, that some of these things are easier said by me than done by somebody, but nevertheless, I will say them because I think they're important. So the first thing is be courageous, right? So be courageous and be stubborn. Just because somebody tells you something doesn't mean it's the truth. Do your own work, do your own research, go and seek out your own contacts. The second part is don't just rely on your school and on your teachers and your career teachers. There is more to the world than that. They will give you nuggets. They will give you tin openers. They will point you in certain directions, but they can't give you all the answers. And we really have to stop living in a world whereby we continue to blame other people for our own shortcomings. Right? So it's up to you to go out there and find out more. Now, the other thing I will say is this. There is a fine line to tread between realism and aspirations. And I'll give you a very practical example. And I would always urge to walk that line on the aspiration side rather than on the realism side, but never let go of the realism. So I wanted to be Johan Cruyff, right? Johan Cruyff, the greatest football player, and there's a book behind me, and the greatest football manager who ever lived. And I grew as a young person, I grew up with him being at his very brilliant best as a football player. That was my aspiration. I practiced every day until dark. Yeah. But actually, deep down, I did know that I wasn't going to be that good and that I was not going to be a professional football player. So I suppose what I did was I distinguished between my dream and my aspiration, and reality was my compass. So even now, after all those years, I still dream of being Johan Cruyff. And when I walk past a ball that's lying in a park somewhere, I cannot not touch it. I cannot not pretend to do the Cruyff turn. But I know that I'll never play for Barcelona and I'll never play for Ajax Amsterdam, but the dream remains. The aspiration has to be tinged with a sense of realism. But the realism can't then turn into a ceiling. The realism can't be just because I live here, I can't do those things, i.e. that realism that some of those youngsters in Wythenshawe had all those years ago. You know, I can't fly planes because of where I come from. Or the realism that many years later, very sadly, occasionally I encountered in the Kidzanias, when you would talk to, a black primary school girl who felt that she could not become a pilot. And when you ask the question, what makes you say that? The answer would be, and this is a really important point, the answer would be because I've never seen one. So I did used to ring up British Airways and people and say, can you just send some people to Kidzania so that some of those youngsters can actually begin to associate and see the possible? Yeah, because we have to show the possible and then we can aspire to that. So it's a complex thing. But going back to the key points of your question, the 15 to 18-year-olds, be courageous and look, right? I had to do it in a library. You've got the advantage of Google. So actually, you can do it from the comfort of your bedroom or wherever you are. But if you don't look, you will not find it.